Alright, y'all, so today I want to do a very quick review of Season 7 of Smallville. Just recently finished this season. Like always, I haven't seen the rest of the show, so no future knowledge of what's going to happen beyond the already pretty online spoilers that are already running around. Um, that being said, I went into season 7 pretty excited. Now, I liked season 6. I thought overall it was a really solid thing. There's some storylines that I had issues with, but I think for the most part, season 6 was pretty solid. Going into season 7, this is a pretty significant season for a lot of reasons. A lot of questions are answered in this season. A lot of characters have send offs here. A lot of actors don't return after this season, apparently. The original showrunners, this is going to be their last season. And, in a lot of ways, a lot of new characters are introduced here. And this is definitely a season full of new stuff and change. Now, like I said, with all change, it's good and bad. So I'm going to get into my pros and my cons and my overall thoughts on season 7, like always. So let's get into it. Now, season 7, to start with the pros, there's some pretty new stuff that are introduced. The biggest thing, and arguably the selling point of this season, was the fact that Kara, aka Supergirl, is introduced in this season. She's even thrown into the intro of the show. And, I have to be honest with you, the actress that they got to play her was really good in the role. I thought that she did a really good job. She played off well Tom Welling's Superman. It felt like they had some family chemistry right there. And I thought that her story was pretty interesting. And there were some pretty cool storylines involving her, especially how in the beginning she's like angry and very abrasive, and then eventually kind of learns to live among the people on Earth and kind of listens to Clark more. And even Clark learns from her in a lot of ways. It's a really cool and interesting bond. I mean, there's been a lot of characters besides Chloe that Clark can really relate to, and Kara is one of the only ones that can. And I think she was pretty good, even though I do say that she was kind of unevenly used, and at some points in the show, it felt like the writers didn't really know what to do with her character throughout the season, because at some point she loses her memory, and then she kind of builds it back, and then gets her memory back. It's a weird storyline, to say the least, but I think Supergirl's addition to Smallville was really good. I also thought, of course, like always, all the main actors do a great job. Tom Welling, Lois Lane, the actress that plays her, Chloe, great as always. And I really got to say, there's some, like I said, really cool standouts. Lionel Luthor, the actor that plays him, does a great job. There's also a lot of the music, the CGI, the production side of things is still, like always, very solid. Even though I will say for 2007, 2008, there is still some really dodgy CGI here and there. But I think the fight scenes, and especially with the flying, it doesn't look completely great. But for what it's accomplishing, of course, on a TV budget, it looks pretty good. So on all departments there, it looks good. Now I'm going to get into some of my favorite episodes and storylines. I already mentioned the fact that I really liked Supergirl introduced in this season. She was pretty cool. I also like the fact that we get to see Chloe. Now, we learn a lot more about Chloe. We find out that she has powers, the ability to heal, and I really like this addition. Like I said, Chloe learning about Clark's secret in the previous seasons was a great and obvious change made by the writers. And giving her powers, I don't think totally breaks the character. I think it's a pretty cool addition, and I think it gives her a little bit more usefulness in the story. So pretty cool stuff. I also like Jimmy Olsen and their back and forth with the relationship and Chloe's. It was really good, and I felt very natural, and like the actor who always plays Jimmy Olsen does a pretty good job. Green Arrow shows up for maybe one episode here. He's pretty cool. Just wish he was in the season more. We get introduced to Black Canary, which, she was all right. I mean, they went for more comic accuracy there, but it was okay. Not great. Lois Lane also I really like in this season. She's becoming more and more like the Lois Lane that we all know from the movies and comics and shows. And it's a really cool, and I felt like it was a natural evolution of her character. There's really some good scenes between her and Clark. There's subtly, obviously, hinting things. It was really well done. And there's some just, like I said, great episodes on a lot of stuff. I thought the Bizarro storyline was pretty cool for the most part, even though I do think it's kind of weird that Bizarro, for a good amount of episodes, is hiding as Clark. I did like the subtle changes they made to him. Like I said, in like the whole show, he wears a red jacket, blue shirt. Bizarro wears like the opposite of that. That's like a very subtle but really cool difference. But having him sleep with Lana, that's a little bit kind of a weird thing they did. And she even says it like, oh, I felt more loving to Bizarro. That was a bizarre scene in the show, admittedly. Also, Lana's here in the series. Totally forgot to mention. She's back. She's fully living in with Clark, and they fully have an open relationship, and she knows about everything, but it's clearly on the rocks, and it feels a little bit stale. But, I did like that development of the story, at least. It felt very free and open. And there's, like I said, there's some decent episodes here and there. I did like the storyline revolving around Supergirl's father, Zor-El, coming back, at least an imitation of him. We even get to see Clark Kent's mother, Lara. That was really cool, those episodes. At least the storyline itself, I thought, was pretty damn solid. And, of course, one of the big standout episodes is Pete. Yes, Pete comes back from the previous seasons of Smallville. After abruptly leaving the show, he comes back. Now, I personally think his episode, and I'll get to my cons, is a very mixed bag. But, hey, the fact is, Pete came back for a guest spot. That was really cool and really interesting. I also like the fact, too, that I also like some other episodes, too. There was an episode where Lana got Clark's powers briefly. Now, they have done this with, like, other people and stuff, but I felt like it was a pretty decent episode learning about it. And the whole Lionel Luthor stuff, and the big crux of this season, which is very brought into the last of the season with an ongoing story, is the whole secret society thing of Veritas. Now, it's a little bit confusing how it's explained in the show, and I'll get into this in a bit. Basically, there's a secret organization that Lionel Luthor was a part of alongside some other famous billionaires, including Queen Industries. They were basically somehow got information from Lara, from Jor-El, from other Kryptonians that there's a traveler coming to Earth and that we must prepare for the traveler, hide him, and prevent the control of him. At some point, this secret organization breaks down. Lionel Luthor allegedly kills everyone and basically wants to pursue like his obsession with the Traveler. And like I said, in a lot of ways explains to how he becomes Jor-El's emissary and all this stuff because, like I said, they knew about him and the Traveler and stuff. And you can arguably, like I said, use this secret organization to explain a lot of the coincidences that happened in previous seasons, like maybe the cave and that whole thing and Lionel Luthor's investigations of it. I guess, like I said, in a lot of ways, could explain that. And they kind of go deeper and deeper into it. There's a whole storyline revolving around this plot device that basically it's a device to control Clark. And Lex Luthor obviously is trying to pursue it. The big thing is that Lex kills his own father in pursuit of this thing, which he perceives as his father loving the Traveler more than his own son, like this obsession. And, he pursues it. He gets a device. Of course, at the very end of the season, which honestly the finale was really solid and really good, was that Lex kind of finds out about Clark in its entirety. Now, like I said, we'll wait to see if that actually sticks. But, basically uses the device to possibly control the Traveler. And I thought, like I said, many aspects of the storyline with the secret society were built up, and I think were nicely done. There's just parts about this that I'm not really fully on board with. And maybe this is my familiarity with some of the Superman lore. But it just, like I said, some of the weird changes of it kind of weird me out. But I did really like a lot of the writing here and some of the storylines that were introduced. And, I definitely did like the finale. I mean, Smallville usually has really great finales, but I thought this was a very solid one. It was really good, especially with Lana breaking up with Clark at the end. And this seems like, to me, the way it was done, it really felt like this was the end, which I'm totally fine with. Their relationship was kind of on the rocks. But, like I said, there's a lot of really crazy stuff. Lionel kills his own father in pursuit of the device to control Clark. That's a totally Lex Luthor thing to do. It felt totally natural and an escalation throughout the show for that thing to happen. And when it does happen, it's really well executed. And a really tragic thing that character had to die because the actor did such a great job. But it was really well done and executed. Now I'm going to get into some of my cons with this season. This mainly revolves around the crux of the plot at the end and some of the weird episodes. Let's get into first the Pete one. Now, the Pete one was, like I said, I like the fact that Pete came back in the series. It was great. It was a great cameo. It's been multiple seasons that Pete Ross just disappeared and he came back. It was really cool. But that being said, this is one of the worst product placements I've ever seen in a show. Stride gun, or gum, excuse me. Why did I say stride gun? Might as well put a gun when I'm watching an episode on me. No, gum. One of the worst product placements and cruxes I've ever seen to a TV show. And not only that, Pete just complains throughout the whole episode. Now, I get it. He was affected by kryptonite. But I just felt like it was really disrespectful. He comes back in the series for the first time in years at this point, and he just gets kryptonite poisoned, and all he does is just complain and complain. Oh, my secret this, oh, my secret that. And it just felt very much like, are these guys best friends or what? Now, like I said, granted, they did have a cool little basketball scene. It was a nice callback. But I just thought this was a really poorly done episode. It could have been a lot better, especially Pete. Pete deserved way better. What really shameful, like I said, of an episode, in my opinion. And then the whole Veritas thing. The idea that Kryptonians got on Earth and that Laura scouted out the house for Jonathan Kent and Martha Kent and Zor-El was there. Now, the Zor-El love triangle thing, that was okay. I didn't mind that plot. But the idea that Laura and Jor-El had already predetermined the location that Clark was going to go, I don't know how to feel about that, man. And there's a lot of this whole, destiny stuff, predetermined destiny. And I've always been, like I said, in a lot of media, kind of against that. Because in life in general, destiny is never secured and certain. Life is always in flux. And sure, a lot of decisions and small mistakes or good decisions make up a person's life. It's never this whole destiny's predetermined for you. You make your own destiny at the end of the day. And I just kind of didn't like the idea that the Kryptonians scouted out Jonathan Kent's house and predetermined they knew that they were going to send Clark there. Like I said, if that was really the case, why didn't the ship just land right outside their house? If I remember correctly, in the beginning of the show, it just kind of lands in a cornfield that they're driving by. And I didn't like that change. It felt very predetermined. It just felt very weird. And especially the idea that Laura scouted out his house when they were gone. I don't know how to feel about that, man. I've always preferred the origin story that they sent Clark out into space from Krypton, Kal-El, and he just happened to land in Smallville and happened to find Jonathan and Martha Kent. It was all a coincidence. It was by pure accident. There's been many stories where if Clark landed somewhere else in the world, he would have turned out a very different person. There's some alternate stories in comics where Clark lands in Russia and becomes a Soviet Superman. And I've always liked the idea that it was just pure coincidence he landed in Kansas and met Jonathan and Martha Kent. It makes it feel more natural and ordinary. I don't like the idea that Kryptonians just scouted out and predetermined everything. And this kind of gets into more of the secret group thing. Now, the secret group thing you can arguably use to explain certain aspects of the show, like characters know certain things and stuff. But once again, that kind of adds upon the idea. Like, there's a secret society that, like, what Kryptonians contacted them. Now, the Jor-El emissary thing was fine for Lionel Luthor. I felt like that could have been naturally explained. I don't know how about, like, a secret group that could have explained that. That just could have been a thing where Jor-El gave Lionel powers. But that being said, the whole thing, it's protecting the Traveler. We're preparing for the Traveler. He's going to change destiny. I don't know how to feel about that, man. Like I said, it feels like something that's, like, predetermined, and, like, characters have to do this because it's their destiny. Granted, you have these powers and these natural conversations with people, and I get it too. A lot of superhero fiction does this, but I just don't like. I don't like the whole predetermined destiny thing as much. Life is very much in flux, and when characters and stuff and routes like this, I don't really care about that kind of stuff, the predetermined stuff. And like I said, just the whole Kryptonian thing bothered me. The secret society thing kind of weirded me out because, once again, it was kind of a thing that just, like, was anything that Clark did out of just pure luck and chance. What if he grew up and still landed on Jonathan's farm and became a super disrespectful and hateful person? You just can't predict these kind of things. It's not predetermined. Life isn't predetermined. So I just think that aspect of the Traveler and all this stuff, I don't really know how to feel about all that. And like I said, they kind of hype up the whole Destiny thing. It's like because Lex and, Clark or Superman and Lex are obviously arch enemies in the TV shows and comics. And I get it. This whole point of this show is to set that up. And I think, like I said, for the most part, I think the way some characters come to conclusions make a lot of sense. But I think at the end of the day, Lex should be the archenemy to Superman just because, number one, his close relationship to Clark, and just ideology, or I can't speak words today, but they're just natural differences in viewpoints and how they perceive things and good and evil. Just naturally make them arch enemies and evil and totally against each other. Not in the prophecies it says an evil person. I don't know how to feel about all that. That's all I'm gonna say. Like I said, predetermined stuff, I'm not the biggest fan of, and I think it just kind of makes this season kind of weak. There's many aspects too. Like, for example, there was a time travel episode that was a really good storyline, but they don't really exploit it as well as it could have. I did like Brainiac's return, though. I did think that was a huge positive to the season, but I think there was a huge missed opportunity to actually see Krypton in full during that time travel part. And it's very unclear, like I said, what happened to Supergirl, which we'll definitely find out probably in Season 8. But like I said before, I just have some big writing issues with this season. I think there's many aspects of it, and in a lot of ways, retcons, if you look at it, to certain aspects of the series that I'm not the hugest fan of. Not all the pieces land together in a nicely compiled order, in my opinion. Some aspects of it I do like, but I think overall, other aspects I don't like. So I think overall, Season 7 is a pretty mixed bag. Arguably, I think, a lot of the weird writing decisions kind of make it one of the more weaker seasons of the show. Is it, like, worse than maybe, like, something like Season 4? I don't know. I mean, I think it does more right than Season 4, at least in my opinion, or Season 1. But it's, like, slightly, there's some bizarre decisions writing-wise, retcon-wise, and honestly, I actually think maybe Season 1's a little bit better than this, to be frank here. But, yeah, that's my overall opinion, rambling on Season 7 of Smallville. Still a solid season, but some bad, poor, bizarre writing decisions, for me personally, bring the quality down of this season compared to other seasons. And hopefully the show definitely can fix it. But, yeah, that's my thoughts on Season 7 of Smallville. Peace, y'all.